I'm delighted that both Hope and Ellie are here today to talk about Hope's latest film, The Levelling, that was shot down on the levels and encompasses so much of Somerset's glorious landscapes. Film tourism to the county is of huge importance, and whether it's Wolf Hall, whether it's Poldark, or whether it's any other major film like Hot Fuzz that was shot here, so many of our visitors come to the county to actually see the locations where the films were actually shot. Currently, film tourism is worth about £5 million to the county's economy. We want that to grow to 10 million over the next 5 years, and having both Ellie and Hope here today giving that wonderful interview to us at Visit Somerset has just been a huge privilege, and we're absolutely delighted.
We very much enjoyed having Hope and Ellie here today, here at the Bishop's Palace. Filming is just so important to us here in these gardens and with our magnificent palace. We're an independent charity, the Palace Trust, and we need all the income that we can get to keep this place open to the public throughout the year, and that is why filming is just so important to us. Being used as a filming location really means a lot to us. We, as an independent charity, we're absolutely reliant on raising our own funds to keep this place open to the public. And having more and more films coming here to Somerset, coming here to Wells in particular, really helps to boost visitor numbers. And that's what we need to keep these iconic places open.
I went to boarding school actually in Dorset. So I had been familiar with Somerset a little bit. And obviously it's part of the world that I love. It's very beautiful. And when I was developing the story, actually, that's when the floods happened. And I saw Matilda Templey's beautiful photos in the Telegraph. And I wanted to know more about what had happened. So I came down and Matilda introduced me to some farmers and to some people who'd been affected by the floods. And I started talking to them, and their stories were so extraordinary and so human and so important. And while I was here, the sun was blazing and it was gorgeous, and I just thought, this is the most wonderful place. This is the right place to tell this story.
The very simple answer is that I accepted the part because I thought it was really well written, and it was a story that I hadn't really seen before. And it was about a part of the world which, I'd never visited, and it was, I loved how in Hope's script the fact that nature played such a strong character in it, and I was really excited to approach the huge challenge that this part offered.
This film couldn't have been made without the help of so many different people from Somerset, from the people facilitating locations to people sharing their stories and their research, having photos of different times of Somerset history for us to the art department to see, for us to make sure we were getting everything absolutely right, to the farmer who taught us how to milk cows,
yeah, Robert.
So, it was just absolutely brilliant. It was totally film friendly. Very easy to shoot here, loved it. We were so lucky with the weather. We couldn't have done it if the weather had gone wrong, because our budget was not big enough to kind of cope with that. And
the only thing that went wrong was the fake weather.
Exactly, we had to bring in a rain machine, and that broke. Somerset. I mean, it was just glorious. There was a big range of locations because it's a very small story, but it was important to me that we got the sense of the world, of her world, her experience, and just going to the different farms, the different fields and locations, and walking around and just seeing the kind of wide range of different landscapes you have here was just spectacular. So the film is it's essentially a family drama about a young woman who returns home when she finds out that her brother's died, and she hasn't been home for 7 years. She's fallen out with her father. So what we're essentially watching is a reconciliation story between her and her father. But along the way, she rediscovers her love for the land, for the farm, and ultimately for her father. And she has to kind of go through a lot, but she's got a lot of questions because it turns out that her brother killed himself, and she wants to understand why. And obviously in her absence, the farm has been through the floods, and she wasn't there, and she needs to discover, what it was actually like and what they've been through, and she has to take all that on board.
Well, you said it pretty well there. There's not much to add, but I suppose in terms of my part in the film, so I play Clover, who's a young vet. And she's kind of got she's been running away from her kind of family her whole life, I think, really, and she's kind of almost succeeded in escaping them until, this tragedy befalls her and her family, and she has to go back to, the only member who's left, her father, and find the way, find a way to reconcile their differences. And in a way, it's almost kind of a love story between them, isn't it? Be able just to admit to each other that they love each other and that they want it to work somehow. Yeah. So I think it's really just about Clover. For her, the character, the journey she needs to go on is learning how to talk to her father and how to be emotionally vulnerable and name the scary feelings that she has. I hope, hopefully, the message I think that we'll get across amongst many others is, how important it is to talk with your family and the people that you love, because sometimes they're the hardest ones to speak to. And fingers crossed, we'll start some conversations with the film.
I hope so. I think Ellie's spot on. I mean, I think for me, it's always about communication, about keeping those lines of communication open, about understanding how important it is to be there for each other. And I mean, I think, one of the things for me, having grown up in the city, not having grown up on a farm, and learning so much during the course of making this film about country life and about, about the challenges that are faced. And I think that understanding, from people from different walks of life, understanding what the challenges are in each other's lives is so important. And I think the more we learn about, how difficult it is to have a farm, maybe we'll be prepared to pay a bit more for milk. I think it sounds kind of silly, but it's sort of like, well, actually, we need to humanise our society again, and to remember that we're all just trying to get along and trying to do the best we can, and we start to sort of become fractured and lose sight of things. And I think that, as Ellie said, it's about communicating and about being there for each other. So hopefully that's at the heart of the story.